Welcome to Ogles channel, thanks for watching today. Let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy and Game Boy Color game. And today we're going to focus on a game called Trax for the original Game Boy. Now this is a top-down tank shooter game that's actually more akin to like the overhead levels in Contra, because you get to control where your tank's going, left, right, up, and down. It's not an auto-scrolling game. It's actually developed by HAL Laboratory, you know, the people who did Kirby. And there's actually a few animations that sort of overlap between the two games. But it's actually a really charming game. I just simply never heard of it before. But as far as like games go, they were just sort of under the radar. This is pretty high up there. Now, this particular video did get moved up in the queue a little bit because one of my subscribers, the Swillman, commented on one of my earlier videos, asked me to cover the game Trax. So naturally, I moved it up in the queue a little bit. If there's a game that you would like to see me cover sooner than later, let me know the name of that game in the comments down below. And just like Trax, I'll move it up and cover it as soon as I possibly can. But let's go ahead and get into the game Trax. Now, I always like to start the videos off by looking at the box art for the game, and the box art for Trax summarizes the game literally perfectly. Because you have your tank, which is right smack dab in the middle. You have some of the bosses or some of the enemies in the background. You have the giant robot dragon you're going to fight against inside the game. You have the helicopter boss you're going to fight against inside the game. You have these little tanks you're going to fight against inside the game. And I mean, you have the same little desert aesthetic, which is one of the levels in the game. And so, I mean, like, it summarizes the game nearly perfectly on what you're expecting to get. And I do personally like the animation style, especially on that dragon in the background, that helicopter. Man, those look like straight out of like retro 80s, and I love it. But let's go ahead and dive into the actual game of Trax. Now, when you start the game up here, it has a pretty unique little intro here. It has the instructions, go, turn, and shoot, that sort of flash on the screen, and then a little picture of your tank getting ready to do those particular motions. And so it sort of shows you like what to do in the game from the title screen, but also has a little bit of comedy in it as well, because when it shoots a little cannonball up in the air, it falls back down your tank and it blows up. And so it shows you that the game has a little bit of a sense of humor at the same time. But after the initial title screen pops up here, if you just give it a second, the story of the game begins, and it shows like the enemy tanks coming down the screen here, and I guess they're overtaking the land, and one tank is left behind, and all the little citizens, all the little people, come out and basically take that tank and take that tank away. And it's sort of a confusing intro, and you don't really understand like exactly what's happening in the intro here. And so I decided to look in the game manual because I was like, there's got to be a story behind what's happening. And it turns out there's a Republic of Akuta that's decided to take over the countryside, and that's the army that's invading in the little intro sequence here. And one tank is sort of, I guess, decrepit, falls behind. The citizens take over that decrepit tank, and they basically convert it to being their own personal tank, and they're going to use that to try to fight it back against the Republic of Akuta and take back their land. However, since the tank is a repurposed or refurbished tank, it can't function like perfectly on its own, and it can only rotate its aim to the right instead of the left, and that sort of portrays inside the game as well, because when you press the A button, the tank's aim will rotate to the right. And so I think it's sort of a way to implement the limitations of the Game Boy into the story of the game. And I mean, that's sort of cool on its own. But regardless, you have this refurbished tank here. You're getting ready to fight back against the nation of Akuta and try to take back your countryside. And so there is a nice little story to go along with that. Now, as you look at the main title screen here, it does say main game or multi-game. We're going to cover the main game first. We'll come back to the multi-game after this. But the main game here only has 4 levels in it. And truth be told, you can probably beat the game in like 20, maybe 30 minutes. It's a pretty darn short game. But the first level here is going to be called Grasslands, and it's basically going to pick up where the story in the intro left off. And you're in your countryside here, and you pretty much have free reign any direction you want to go. You want to go up, you want to go down, left, right, and you can turn your little tank, you know, you rotate your aim by pressing the A button, and you simply fire your cannon bullets out. Very simple control-wise for the game. But one thing I always enjoyed about this particular style of game is you can destroy like everything in the environment. You see a little house over there, shoot a cannonball at it, blow it up. You see a little barn over there, shoot a little cannonball at it, blow it up. You see a fence over there, shoot a cannonball at it, blow it up. Even if it's not an enemy, like I said, anything you want to in the environment is completely interactive and destructible. And I don't know, games that allow that are just instantly a more fun game, at least for me. But as you're traveling up the screen here, you have pretty much, like I said, free reign where you want to go. It's like the overhead levels in Super C or in the Contra games for the NES. You sort of, you know, go up, down, left, right. It's a very free roam game, and there's not like a particular time limit to, you know, to reach your destination, which I personally do enjoy. Now, as you're going through this, obviously you're going to start encountering some enemies, and in the first level, it's mainly just enemy tanks here. They're going to look sort of like your tank because, you know, that's what the enemy tanks had in the intro. They're going to be shooting at you, and they have sort of the similar aiming mechanics that you have. And you can pretty much take them out pretty easily in the first level. But one thing that I always find appealing in these style of games are the power-ups that you can get to take these enemies out. And there's these little cargo trucks that are scattered throughout the environment. And the cargo trucks are going to have all kind of weapon power-ups, like you can get a rocket, It's going to shoot out a bullet way faster than what your normal cannonball is. You can get like a little bomb that sort of explodes at the end of that. You can get like a spread shot that sort of, does the traditional contra spread, multiple directions. And you get another one that's like a frontwards and backwards that shoots a bullet out from the front of the tank as well as the back. And truth be told, like all these power-ups are like legitimately good at different parts inside the game, because sometimes you're going to need to be able to shoot behind you, and it takes a little while to rotate your aim, from the top by pressing the A button all the way to the back. And so it's nice to be able to shoot frontwards and backwards. The spread obviously is always one of my favorites. You can cover the entire front of the screen in front of you. But I mean, the weapon variety is pretty good in the game. I mean, there's not like a ton of weapons, but I mean, it's only a 4-level game. And so considering the length of the game, the weapon variety is pretty darn good. But also in the cargo tanks, you can get like gasoline cans, which gives you more health, or you get like a little tank image, which gives you an extra life. So anytime you see a cargo tank, go ahead and blow it up, even if you have a power up, because you might end up getting like extra life or an extra health gasoline container inside there. As you continue through the level here and you're blowing up the buildings, or you're blowing up the tanks, or you're blowing up, different items here, you're going to notice like all the little explosions come from behind them, whether they're a small explosion or a big explosion. At least to me anyway, these look like the same animations from Kirby's Dream Land. And so I can't help but think that HAL Laboratory took the program animation from Kirby and just sort of put it in this game because they needed a quick little explosion animation. And I mean, it fits so well here. You would never blink an eye about it, but I'm pretty sure they just simply lifted the explosion animations from one game to another, but I could be totally wrong in saying that. But eventually, as you're journeying through the level, you're going to get to a mini boss, and the mini boss for the Grasslands is basically a helicopter that can shoot out its blades and try to attack you with the blades. And I know physics-wise that makes like zero sense at all. How could the helicopter stay in air while it's shooting its blade out? But that doesn't matter. This is a video game, and so it's shooting its blade out, trying to attack you. Really simple mini boss to take out. You just sort of avoid the giant blade that's coming at you, which is pretty darn easy, and just keep firing away, and you'll have the helicopter taken out in just a matter of a few shots. Then you continue on through the level, and you finally get to the boss of level 1. Now, the boss level 1 is legit a pretty cool little boss here, and the boss is like this robotic dragon, and all you have to do is simply continue to shoot the head. The head will blow up, it'll grow another head out of its body, and you blow that head up, and you've defeated the first boss in the game. Once again, this game overall is not going to be very hard. I didn't have a game over the entire time I was playing through it, but the creativity and some of the interactions behind it, pretty darn top notch. Now level 2 is going to be the desert level, and as you would expect, it has more of a desert aesthetic to it, and has new enemies at the same time. You have these tractor trailer trucks that can shoot rockets out at you. Has these little, I guess I'd call them like two-legged rotating robots that are sort of running on the screen. The sprite's not real clear on what that enemy is, but it looks like a two-legged robot to me that's running around, sort of rotating the legs as it goes. If that animation doesn't make sense to you, I don't know what would. But there's also smaller helicopters you have to fight against, more traditional tanks like in level 1 you fight against, and so they're continuing trying to up the enemy variety throughout the entire game here. And when you get to the mini boss, you're basically going to be fighting a clone version of yourself. And so initially it's just a small version, just like your tank, you're firing against it, but once you destroy that tank, it sort of blows up and then mutates into being a giant tank on the screen. And I always enjoy these old games when they put these giant sprites on the screen and take up like almost the entire area, and especially when they're so blurry like this, like you're zoomed in on it. I don't know, it's sort of, I know Contra Super C, or I guess actually Contra 3 to Alien Wars did it, when like the things were coming in from the top of the screen, they were so close to the camera, they were so pixelated out. It reminds me of that at least, but a very easy mini boss to take out. You continue through the level doing the same exact stuff you were doing before the mini boss. You get to the final boss here, and this is like the weirdest little boss inside the game. It's almost like a inept robot. It tries to walk and it just sort of falls down, and it tries to walk again, falls down, and all you have to do is avoid it falling on top of you, and it doesn't fire any bullets at you. You are literally avoiding a robot that is unable to stand up. And so potentially some bad design here by the Republic of Fukuda, but regardless, you just sort of fire away, and the giant clumsy robot here is taken out. Now when you move into the third level of the game, it's going to be called the Cave, and for it to be called the Cave, you spend very little amount of time in an actual cave, because you're fighting through like a normal level that has like little train tracks on it, little rock wall sides or mountain sides on each border of you, and then you go into a cave and you're inside the cave for like, I don't know, maybe 40 seconds, and then you exit out of the cave, fight through another prolonged area with mountains and railroad tracks and whatnot. Then you go into a cave again for a little while, and then back outside the cave. And so I guess, yes, the level title is accurate as far as calling it the cave, but you aren't really fighting inside the cave as much as I had anticipated. Not a big criticism, but you know, I would have probably chosen to tile this level outside the cave or mountains and cave. That's what I would have called it. Cave and mountains. There we go. But of course, we do have some new enemies inside the level. We have these little drill mobiles that sort of drill outside the mountainside, and they remind me so much of like the Ninja Turtles toy that Shredder would have to just basically drill out from the ground. I don't know if he ever used it inside a television show or not, but I know there was a toy out there where Shredder had this giant drill on top of a little mobile. I don't know, I never had it growing up, but I did see it on the toy shelves as a kid. But that vehicle inside the game here, you also have these basically bomb trucks, have a little bomb sign on them, they're going to blow up trying to get to you, as well as like sort of super tanks. They're a little bit more heavy duty than the normal ones that you're fighting against. Now when you get to the mini boss of this level, it's basically like a giant bowling ball or a giant cannonball is going to be coming at you, and it sort of bounces around the screen, and it can open up and has like a little smaller ball or eyeball inside it that's going to shoot out, you know, little bullets at you. Very easy to avoid most of these, and you don't actually even have to hit the enemy or the boss in the eyeball when it opens up. You can just simply fire away at its outer shell and you can beat it that way. And so for a long time, or I guess not a long time, but for a little while, I was trying to simply aim my shots to shoot just at the eyeball. But like I said, it doesn't matter at all. Just shoot it anytime it comes across the screen, try to avoid the shots, and you'll have them taken out pretty darn fast. And not long after that, you're going to get to the final boss of the level, and this is like the most random final boss I can think of for a level called the cave level, because you would think it'd be like, I don't know, maybe a cave salamander or a golem of some sorts or something. I don't know, anything but about what I'm about to say here. You get a giant jack-in-the-box to fight against here. A giant clown jack-in-the-box with all his little arms are going to come out of the little cave holes, try to attack you, and then its little, you know, jack-in-the-box head or clown head comes down, and you simply have to fire away at the clown head. It's a very easy boss, but like, I never ever would have guessed this particular boss was going to appear at the end of the cave levels. And of course, when you get into the last little hits here, he starts like decomposing a little bit. Sort of a weird little sight, but a unique boss, I will say that for sure, but it just didn't make any sense inside the cave level, but still, you know, interesting enough. Now the final level here is going to be called Capital City, and you're basically going to be journeying to the heart of the Republic of Akuta, and you're fighting through the cityscape here, and the enemies are going to be like these giant tanks that are going to be coming at you, these little motorcycles that are all sort of swarming around you. This is probably the hardest level inside the game, which makes sense, it's the last level in the game, but I still wouldn't call it a extraordinarily difficult level. Eventually you're going to get to a giant tank, and you're going to sort of blow up the intro, and you can go inside the front or the little nozzle, I guess, boy, that's not the correct term for a tank. Barrel is the term I was looking for. You go into the barrel of the main turret on the tank, and once you go into the main tank itself here, which is like the home base for the Republic, you now fight against every mini boss and every boss again that you fought inside the game. And obviously the surroundings are a little bit different. You're going to have the same little background here inside the tank for all of them, but you basically just simply go through every main battle once again. Now after you go through all of the main battles, you're going to get to fight the final boss inside the game here, who's basically like a giant robot puppet. And I never would have thought the Republic of Akuta was going to be a robot puppet clown nation, but I guess that's what it is. And so you're fighting against a giant puppet here. The first stage is a little bit confusing because you're just simply supposed to fire away at the middle part, and I tried to fire away at the circuit boards on the left and the right where the little shocks were coming out of. I don't know, I thought you had to destroy those and then focus on him. I was completely wrong. Just simply fire right in the middle, blow that up, then he goes away, comes back, and he basically sort of swaps his puppet arms out with like, you know, like a turret or, you know, like a fan or like a giant hammer to try to come down and squish you a little bit. None of these are particularly difficult to avoid, but there's a lot of variety here. Some pretty cool sprites for the puppet master to swap out all of his arms that he's trying to attack you. And then when you defeat him, he does put a little sign up that basically says he gives up. And then there's a little animation scene here of you being blasted out of the giant tank from the Republic onto the ground, and the tank begins to blow up, and the end begins to scroll across, but not before you are then being chased off into the sunset by that clumsy robot boss from level 2. Why he makes an appearance again, I don't know. He wasn't the main boss of the game. I guess he's like the comedic relief, but he continues to fall, you continue to run away, and that's the antics of the end of the game. And so I would presume that you've rescued your countryside from the Republic, but it doesn't actually say that you've restored peace to your countryside, especially since the clumsy robot is still alive in the closing credits. But regardless, that is the main story here. I know I made a few jokes about the game as I was going on here, but like, it's actually a really fun, really solid overhead tank shooter in the style of those old Contra games. And for 20-30 minutes, I had a blast with it. And this is a game I could actually see myself going back and playing again at some point, just as a relaxing, fun time on the Game Boy. Now, as I said, there's actually another mode inside the game, which is the multiplayer mode. And as you go into that, there are like 12 or 13 maps you can choose from, and you don't even have to have a link cable. If you want to play this mode, you can still play against computers, but if you want to play against humans, obviously you have to link up with your Game Boys. But if you go in there, without anybody, you can play against computers, and it puts you on these different maps, and you're basically fighting against 3 other computers or 3 other players, and you're trying to destroy their tank and, just survive in these different little landscapes. It's actually a pretty fun little game mode here. And I played through most of the maps just for the heck of it. It's not part of the finishing the game, but still, it was fun enough to play and see if I could beat all these little tanks in all these different levels. And I think if you were, back in the old days, when you actually used your link cable a lot, I could see this game being a pretty darn popular game on the playgrounds and whatnot. I personally never had it, but if I had have had it, I can say for sure that me and my friends would have had a blast on a particular game. But the main game itself, of course, traveling through those 4 levels, a ton of fun to go through, a lot of replayability on just being a simple, fun, overhead tank game. The multiplayer, if you got people to play with, also a really fun multiplayer tank game. And so Trax, a really fun game on the Game Boy. Not one that's like really popular, one I'd never heard of, but if you've never heard of it and you never played it before, I definitely suggest giving it a go. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos listed up above. As always, go out there, find a great game to play, and just simply have a great rest of the day.